When we think of classic television, few shows capture the heart and simplicity of American life quite like Leave It to Beaver. Airing from 1957 to 1963, this timeless family sitcom brought us the everyday adventures of little Theodore, Beaver, Cleaver, his brother Wally, and their loving but wise parents, June and Ward. When people talk about the golden age of television, one show almost always comes up in the conversation, and that is Leave It to Beaver. For 6 seasons from 1957 until 1963, it painted a picture of suburban American family life that became the gold standard of wholesome entertainment. The Cleaver family, little Beaver, his older brother Wally, their wise father Ward, and their perfectly poised mother June, wasn't just a TV family. They became part of the American household. The show's themes of honesty, kindness, and life lessons resonated deeply with viewers, which is why even today reruns are still being enjoyed. But what most fans never realized was that the magic of Leave It to Beaver wasn't only in its scripts or its carefully crafted sets. It was in the people themselves, in the way the cast lived their roles with such sincerity that audiences believed they were looking through a window into real family life. Behind the scenes, there were truths and surprises that would never have been guessed by the millions who tuned in each week. One of the most charming revelations is about Jerry Mathers, the boy who played Beaver. Unlike most child actors, Jerry wasn't desperate for the spotlight. In fact, when he was asked to audition, he almost refused. He told the producers quite plainly that he'd rather attend his Cub Scout meeting. That kind of honesty could have cost him the role, but instead it convinced the producers that they had found something rare. Jerry wasn't a polished Hollywood kid trying to impress. He was simply himself, awkward, innocent, and straightforward. That unfiltered truth is exactly what made Beaver so believable. Fans who adored his bumbling honesty on screen never realized they were getting the same thing off screens. A boy who wasn't acting so much as being. His sincerity made the show relatable in a way that no amount of polished acting could have achieved. Then there was Barbara Billingsley, who played June Cleaver, forever remembered for her pearls and gentle manner. Viewers thought she was the picture perfect mother because the role demanded it. But the truth is, Barbara carried that nurturing quality even when the cameras weren't rolling. On set, she became a genuine mother figure to the young actors. She looked after them, offered guidance, and made sure they were treated with kindness and respect in an industry that wasn't always known for protecting child actors. Many of the cast members later admitted that they relied on her for advice and stability. Fans thought June Cleaver was a written role, but what they never realized was that Barbara Billingsley herself embodied so much of June in real life. The warmth wasn't an act, it was her gift. Hugh Beaumont, who played Ward Cleaver, was another example of this blending of life and art. To the audience, Ward was the moral compass of the family, delivering wise advice in moments of confusion and teaching his sons what it meant to be decent young men. Many fans assumed that was simply the character written for him. What they never figured out is that Hugh Beaumont was actually a licensed minister. He brought to the role not only the authority of an actor, but also the genuine wisdom of a man who believed deeply in values, ethics, and family. His calm presence and gentle delivery weren't rehearsed. They came from who he was. That authenticity helped make Ward one of the most respected father figures in television history. The cast often spoke in later years about how unique the show's atmosphere was. There were no flashy gimmicks or exaggerated performances. The children were allowed to act like real children, sometimes awkward, sometimes mischievous, often unsure of themselves. The parents were written not as harsh disciplinarians, but as steady guides. What kept it all together was the cast's willingness to play their roles truthfully. Fans watched believing it was all a perfectly written script. But the reality was that much of the show's appeal came from the natural way the actors connected with each other. This is what most people never figured out. Leave It to Beaver wasn't just a show about a fictional family. It was, in many ways, an extension of the real people who played those roles. Jerry Mathers brought his boyish honesty. Barbara Billingsley brought her maternal warmth. Hugh Beaumont brought his moral compass. Together, they created something genuine, something that audiences could feel in their hearts, even if they couldn't explain why. That's why the show has endured for so long, because it wasn't fake. It was real people sharing real values through the screen. Looking back, we can see that the lessons Beaver learned weren't just scripted morals at the end of each episode. They were reflections of truths the actors themselves believed in and lived by. Fans thought they were only watching the cleavers, but in reality, they were seeing the humanity of the cast shining through. The magic of Leave It to Beaver wasn't a trick of television. It was authenticity, and that's something audiences can always feel, even decades later. When people remember Leave It to Beaver, one of the first images that comes to mind is that of June Cleaver, immaculately dressed, pearls around her neck, and a calm, comforting presence that never wavered. To millions of fans, she was the perfect television mother, the ideal of gentleness, grace, and patience. Yet what many people never figured out, even after watching countless reruns, was just how much of June Cleaver was not an invention of the writers, but a direct reflection of the woman who played her, Barbara Billingsley. Off screen, Barbara wasn't simply performing a role, she was living it in ways that left a lasting impact on the young cast, on the production itself, and on the legacy of family television. Barbara Billingsley was not the kind of actress who treated her job as just another paycheck. From the beginning, she understood that Leave It to Beaver wasn't just a comedy about mischievous kids and life in suburbia. It was a program that children and parents across the country were inviting into their homes. She saw the responsibility that came with playing June Cleaver and took it to heart. Fans adored her on television, but what they never realized was that the same nurturing spirit continued when the cameras weren't rolling. For the children on set, Jerry Mathers, Tony Dow, and the other young actors, Barbara became a true mother figure. She wasn't obligated to step into that role, but she did so naturally, offering them reassurance, encouragement, and advice during the long days of filming. Hollywood has never been the easiest place for child actors. The pressures, the hours, and the sudden attention can overwhelm even the most confident children. But Jerry Mathers, who played Beaver, often said that Barbara always had their backs. She would check on them during breaks, make sure they were eating properly, remind them to rest, and even teach them little lessons about courtesy and professionalism. In many ways, she was doing for them exactly what June Cleaver did for Beaver and Wally on the screen guiding, protecting and gently nudging them toward the right path. Fans believed that June Cleaver was simply a character crafted by writers in an office. But the truth is, Barbara Billingsley infused the role with her own values, so much so that there was little separation between the woman and the character. One of the fascinating things about Barbara's performance is that it never felt heavy-handed. She didn't deliver lectures or try to outshine the others with grand speeches. Instead, her strength was in her consistency. She modeled dignity and calmness, showing that a mother's influence often comes not through force, but through presence. That same consistency was felt behind the scenes. The cast and crew knew that if tensions rose, or if someone was having a difficult day, Barbara was the steady anchor. She had a way of easing situations, of reminding everyone why they were there, and of keeping the set a warm, collaborative place rather than a stressful one. There's another side to Barbara Billingsley that most fans never guessed. While June Cleaver became a cultural icon of the perfect 1950s mother, Barbara herself never intended for her character to represent perfection. She once said in interviews that she didn't view June as flawless, but as a woman who was simply trying her best day after day to love her children and support her husband. That subtle perspective added depth to her performance. What viewers saw wasn't a cold, unreachable standard of motherhood, but a warm and believable example of care. Fans may not have realized it at the time, but that's part of why June Cleaver has remained beloved for generations. She wasn't about perfection. She was about love. The influence of Barbara Billingsley's real personality was also seen in how the cast spoke about her decades later, long after the show ended. Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow recalled her with deep affection, not just as a co-star, but as someone who shaped their lives. That kind of testimony doesn't come from someone who simply played a role and walked away. It comes from someone who genuinely gave of herself, who saw beyond the scripts and cameras, and who understood that kindness lasts much longer than fame. So when we talk about what most fans never figured out, it's this June Cleaver wasn't just a creation of television. She was Barbara Billingsley herself, a woman who carried her maternal spirit into every interaction. The pearls, the dresses, the tidy kitchen, those were props and costumes. The real heart of June Cleaver was Barbara's own heart, and it shone through so naturally that audiences couldn't help but feel comforted by her presence. The show may have ended more than half a century ago, but her warmth has outlived it, leaving a legacy that's more than just entertainment. It's a reminder that authenticity always leaves the deepest impression. Thank you.